where stories come alive and leaders take the mic. This is The Third Degree, where we delve deep into the minds of LBX pros, brought to you by the LBX Collective, your community to connect, engage, and inspire. Hold tight and get ready for an exhilarating journey.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to another Third Degree. I'm excited about this one. So we have Michael Browning Jr. joining, and he and I go back. We were on the Family Entertainment Center committee with IAPA before together, and he is a entrepreneur, speaker, business leader, and is ultimately the founder and CEO of Unleashed Brands. It's a $1 billion youth enrichment platform. And the parent company of multiple childhood development brands. So this includes Urban Air Adventure Park, The Little Gym, Sylvan Learning, Snapology, Premier Martial Arts, Class 101, XP League, and Water Wings Swim School. And under his leadership, the company's become the largest youth enrichment program platform in the world. And so currently serving over 20 million families annually across 1,400, actually more than that, more than 1,400 locations. Like it just keeps going, right? So Browning launched his journey in 2011, and when he first opened up Urban Air Adventure Park, the first location, and quickly became one of the fastest growing family entertainment center concepts in the U.S. And then in 2021, he expanded his vision with the creation of Unleashed Brands, and that basically had the goal of uniting a really fragmented industry into a scalable platform, really targeted to help kids learn, play, and grow. So he's also an adjunct professor and executive in residence at Texas Christian University, and is committed to philanthropy through their Unleashed Brands Foundation, which has pledged millions to support children facing adversity, from funding childhood cancer research to hosting enriching experiences for foster and at-risk youth. So after the break, we will welcome Michael to the stage. Intercard is the only cashless system designed, developed, and manufactured all under one roof. They introduced cashless technology to the amusement industry and have been leading the way for over 30 years. Cashless systems from Intercard increase customer spending, guest satisfaction, and boost revenues by up to 30%. Intercard is so proud to be serving the amusement industry, and if you aren't already part of their global family of customers, they hope you will become one soon. All right. Well, Michael, welcome to the Third Degree, man.
Hey, buddy. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, no doubt. Love your space. It's super calming, actually.
Well, hey, we appreciate it. Yeah, it's awesome to be able to be building something with purpose that you see true impact every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, maybe we'll just go back to the start. So when you first opened Urban Air in 2011, what problem, I mean, maybe it was a problem, maybe it wasn't, but like maybe you're just trying to do something cool. Like what problem were you trying to solve for your guests or for yourself or, for the industry? Because the whole trampoline park industry was really young at that stage.
Yeah, I think that for me, it was more opportunity recognition necessarily than problem solving. I would say when I started Unleash, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, that was definitely problem solving. But for Urban Air, it was really opportunity recognition. I had started a data and analytics company in college, and I had actually sold that to a family office out of Santa Barbara, California. And I was traveling around the world doing different projects with them, and I stumbled upon one of the first trampoline parks. So when I opened Urban Air in 2011, I think we were like the sixth trampoline park in the country. So I don't take credit for necessarily inventing that category or necessarily inventing that concept. But so when I saw the first trampoline park, it took me back to something I loved as a kid, Discovery Zone. And I was like, it just disappeared, and I had so many birthday parties there and just so many fond memories. And it had this kind of sense of a Discovery Zone feel. And but what I then did was started to run it through my data and analytics platform to see that, okay, I think this is a scalable concept, meaning it'll appeal to a mass number of customers. It's also very innovative in the sense that it's different than anything that's out there in the space currently. And so I said, I think this would be a great thing to bring back to my local community. And so we opened that one in 2011, but not without its challenges. Every landlord told me, no, you're crazy. Like, this is going to fail. Every bank was like, we won't give you any money. And so my family and I invested everything that we had in that first location. We literally built it by hand using some of my dad's home building crews. and then opened our doors not knowing what the heck we were doing. Like there was no playbook,
Yeah.
and that's where we came across each other in the early days, just trying to figure these things out.
Yeah, yeah, it's so crazy, and especially, maybe talk about what it was like to work through some of the, I want to say disbelief, but like, people not believing in you, really wanting to like, and not supporting you, right? Like, especially on the bank side, like, what was that
Mhm.
like to just push through and say like, no, I believe that this is a good idea, but yeah, having to deal with a lot of that rejection early on.
Yeah, I think one of the things I always tell people about a core value of myself personally in our company is grit, um, and being courageous. And so, look, the pioneers take all the arrows. If the people around the world who were called crazy stopped with the idea they originally had, we'd still be riding horses. We wouldn't have self-driving cars. We wouldn't have Uber. We wouldn't be streaming music. We wouldn't be streaming videos. And so I think you just have to be okay with building a vision no one else can see. And now everybody, what I always tell people is the masses won't see it, but in your life, you've got to find a mentor who believes in you. You need to have what I call the affirmer in your corner, someone who says like, look, man, I believe in you. You have what it takes. You can go and do this. So if you have those people around you in the early days, you can accomplish a lot. And what I always kept telling myself is I've got to find a way over it, under it, around it, or through it. But I got to get there to accomplish this vision. So it was tough. People thought I was crazy, right? And it's just a few good breaks here and there where like I would have never gotten the building that we opened our first location in if it wasn't for my dad having a relationship with that guy for 25 years. That building my dad went to buy his flooring and his tile from. That guy was blessed and needed a new building, and so my dad said, hey, my son, I know it sounds crazy, has this idea, can he rent your space from you when you move out? He said, I don't think it's going to work, but because you've been a loyal customer, you've operated with integrity, I'll give your son a shot. And so you need a few of those breaks. It's not always
Yeah.
about being the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah, totally, totally. So, I mean, maybe, you opened the first part, and when did you start to think about expanding, and really think, okay, this is more than just a single park. This is really something much larger, and maybe walk us through that path that you went through from going to one park to ultimately, being a large franchise.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I've always gone back to data, using data to either validate my gut or to understand what the next step is, the next opportunity. And so when I had that first location, we were able to capture a lot of consumer data through the waivers, and I started mapping them um, on an old school platform called Map Point. It was like a mild, I don't even think it exists anymore. And I mapped all these dots in the DFW Metroplex, and I noticed that these people were coming from all over, right? And we were always sold out, and so I looked at it and I said, I think that based on the data and where customers are coming from, I could go to Frisco, Texas, I could go to Mansfield. I ran those two communities through our data and analytics platform. It was high growth, young families, businesses were moving in there. And I went to my family and I said, hey, we've paid back our capital in 10 months. Um, let's open two more. And they literally looked at me like, why? Why would we want to do that? They're like the blood, the sweat, the tears, the sleepless nights, like everything we've been through. Why would you want to do that again? And again, I think this is kind of this distorted reality that some entrepreneurs live in. Because I just looked at it in reverse. I said, wouldn't it be a shame to have experienced all those things? And yeah, we had success in the first one, but it's like having more than one kid. Like your first one is really scary. And then your second one, you recognize that cough, you recognize that bump, that bruise, and you don't go to the emergency room every time. Well, as an entrepreneur, every business you open is like having another kid. And I said, I just think that the next one won't be easy, but it will be easier because we will have experienced a lot of the challenges from the first one. And let's use those learnings, that wisdom, to go open the other ones. And I convinced them. And that's what we did. We went and opened in Frisco, Texas, and Mansfield, Texas for our second and third locations.
So you open the three locations. These are corporate owned, right? Single, you're the overarching thing that owns those locations, your overarching company. when did you begin to think about franchising? And what was the decision or the decision framework to franchise versus expand on your own under, under a corporate banner?
Yeah, it's a very funny story. So to say that I had a long-term plan or vision to franchise would be a lie. What was happening is that people were coming into Dallas Fort Worth for Christmas, Thanksgiving, spring break, summer to visit friends and family. And then when they would come into town, people would that lived here would say, "We got to take you to this place called Urban Air. It's insane. You got to check this out. We'll have so much fun." And so people were going. And then lo and behold, like the week after Thanksgiving and all these holidays, I'd start getting phone calls from people saying, "Hey, will you open one in Wichita, Kansas?" And I was like, I don't even know where that is. Like, I know we're fine, right? And I kept getting all these phone calls, and I just kind of ignored them, right? Honestly, I think I was being a little lazy, a little complacent. I wasn't hearing what the world was telling me. And I went to my grandfather's house on a Sunday afternoon after church, and he was sitting by the smoker, smoking a brisket. And he was a big entrepreneur, just like my father. And he said, "Well, how's business?" And I was telling him, "Hey," we called him Grandman. Grandman, business is great, you know. And he said, "Well, what's next?" And I said, "I don't know, but like I keep getting these phone calls from people, you know, and I got this phone call from this guy in Wichita, Kansas, who said, 'Will you franchise it to me?'" And I said, I've done some research and it seems like a lot of work and I don't know if it's the right thing to do. And he said, "Son, I highly suggest that you put a little more effort into learning about franchising. You don't want to look back 10, 15 years from now and wish you would have done it."
Mm.
And so I took that. One of the things I will say is I pride myself in being coachable, taking feedback, right, being teachable. And I went on this quick journey to learn franchising. I got a crash course from a company called Fuzzy's Tacos here that was also founded by a TCU grad, and learned about franchising. And I was just called back John Becker from Wichita, Kansas, and I said, "John, you can be my first franchisee. We'll do this thing together." And after that, we were off to the races.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. I mean, and yeah, truly off to the races. When you went to shift, when you made the shift to Unleashed Brands, um, I remember a little bit of that process when
Yeah.
you moved yourself out of the CEO role of Urban Air and into, you created the Unleashed Brands concept and began to really think of this as a platform. How many locations were you up to at Urban Air? And when you made that shift, and then like, I guess what was, I mean, and I know some of the people you had placed around you at the time,
Yeah.
really really great solid leaders, but how did you feel in making that transition from like, okay, CEO of a single franchise brand to now CEO of what will eventually be multiple brands and a platform?
Yeah, so I think first, to go back a second, like Unleashed Brands was born out of a problem I had as a parent coming out of COVID. When we all came out of COVID, it was like a hard reset, right? It was like I have three kids, and so it was like we gotta figure out where we're gonna put our kids. And so my wife and I divided and conquered on Googling essentially, like to put our kids in things. And at most families, if you have multiple kids, they're all different. And so, it was during this process, I just kind of said to my wife, I go, "This is wild. Like nobody's created the Marriott Bonvoy of like youth enrichment. Like there's no like one-stop shop for like all things kids and making it easier on parents. Like this is way too difficult to like put your kids in stuff, like to enroll them and like to sign up and to track their progress, to know where these things are located." And she saw in my eyes and she was just like, "Oh no." And I was like, "I got to look into this." And I kept saying, where there's fragmentation, there's the opportunity for consolidation.
Mhm.
And so I put this thesis together that I was going to acquire the world's best brands that would help kids learn the basics of science, technology, engineering, and math, identify and grow in their skills and hobbies, and then escape the world through play, active play. And so I pitched it to my private equity partners and they loved it. They're like, "Let's go do it." And then I had to put that strategy together, going like, okay, how am I going to have multiple brands, have this parent company that's a platform, have leaders, and that's when I realized in order to do that, I was going to have to trust in the team that I had built at Urban Air to run Urban Air without me there. And there's that saying, I forget who says it, but you can have control or growth, but you can't have both.
Mhm.
And that's really what it came down to. Like, I wanted to grow myself, the organization. And in order to do that, I had to release some control over Urban Air. And it was scary. It was exciting. It was like all of the kind of emotions you could think of. But I did, in the early days, as I was building Urban Air, build a phenomenal team. I mean, I had hired Jay Thomas
Mhm.
from Six Flags, and I had hired Jennifer Castro from Top Golf, and I mean, I'm just amazing people that were around me that I always felt like at Urban Air, if I'd gotten hit by a bus, Urban Air was going to do amazing things without me. I had set a vision, I had created a culture, and it was going to outlive me, which is, I think, from a legacy perspective, what any entrepreneur wants to do. And so we set out on that journey. Yeah, I stepped out of the role as CEO of Unleashed Brands. I handed that baton over to Jay Thomas, or excuse me, of Urban Air, handed that baton over to Jay Thomas. I stepped into the role of CEO of Unleashed Brands, and we were off to the races.
Yeah. What was one of the I know, when you're growing a brand, you're growing a company, any company of any size, there's always going to be bumps along the way. But what do you feel like was one of the biggest hurdles you had to overcome in growing Urban Air to the size that it was, to the point where you were ready to then, go to the next thing? What was one of the bigger hurdles that, yeah, and lessons you had to learn in order to move forward?
Yeah. So at every stage of the business, right? So there's a great book that I love called Blitzscaling. And it talks about, you start out as a family. You got it back there? I think it's
Yeah, I
orange. It's
do.
on the
Oh, it's
left.
right down
Yeah.
there. I was, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
looking for it.
Yeah.
It's right down there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you start as a family, and then you become a tribe, and then a village, and then a city, and then a nation, and right. And at each one of those stages, you've got to you've got to change how you operate, whether it's communications, the systems, the processes. You might even have to change your team. On the team side, I always like to use the metaphor or analogy of the English Premier League. When you think about the English soccer system,
Mhm.
like, you can get relegated and promoted up and down. And when a team gets promoted, not every player gets to go and
Mhm.
play at that next level, because the speed of the game is faster, and it's harder. And what they may have been great at the level below, but they couldn't play at the level above. They just couldn't adjust. And so one of the things I had to learn early on is, when there were either people or systems or vendors or technologies that couldn't go to that next stage with us, having to have the courage, with also the integrity to make that move, is very important. And to start hiring people and using systems based on where we were going to be, not where we're currently at, so that we could grow into it. um, those are some hard conversations. Those are
Mhm.
some tough decisions, but you have to do it. And I think that's why another book I love, called The Hard Thing About Hard Things, helps with some of those conversations. And it is what it is. And so there's that. And then I also had to change my leadership style. As you get bigger, and people get further away from the nucleus of the founder or the entrepreneur, um, you've got to change how you communicate to make sure that phone tag, or the game of, yeah, phone, doesn't the message doesn't get changed. People hear what you're saying. They understand what they're marching towards. They understand the vision, the goals. And so as I started to build the bigger organization, my philosophy became, I am firm in my vision, but flexible in how we get there, and hiring leaders and trusting them to help us get there. Maybe not the way I would always do it, but as long as we get there and we hit our KPIs, we're good.
Yeah. Yeah, for anybody who is looking to scale very rapidly any type of organization, historically, mine has been on the software technology side. But yeah, hard thing about hard things is great. Ben Horowitz is, he kind of pulls back the curtain a little bit on that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and it's I think it's one that any entrepreneur who's looking to grow or scale a business should read. It is because it'll you'll either decide to be an entrepreneur because of it, or you'll just say, oh, maybe I shouldn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not for everybody, right? And that's
Yeah.
good, though, because
Mhm.
because you can't have a team full of me. We
Mhm.
won't get there, right? Like, and so it is also empowering for people to understand, how they're wired, what they love, what they don't love, what they're good at, what they're bad at. It's why we're big believers in The Working Genius by Patrick Lencioni, just helping people understand what their geniuses are, their competencies, and their frustrations, and then building a team with where everyone on the team has different geniuses, so that the full stack of geniuses is accounted for. And then, like, people know, don't invite me to a meeting where we're going to create action plans and lists, because my
Right.
geniuses are innovation and discernment. And I'll come in there and I'll blow up the meeting because I'll be like, well, have we thought about this? Have we thought about what about this? And they're like, hey, we already decided what we're doing. We're now creating a battle plan. So I'm like, well, don't invite me to the meeting. Right.
Right.
Or, I don't invite people to meetings that want to create tactical plans when it's time for us to ideate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's all
Totally.
about just building that team.
So the team that you've got at Unleashed Brands, obviously, different than the team at each one of these. How have you thought about like making sure that every single one of your individual brands has a solid leadership core, as well as then like the overarching parent company? And how involved are you, especially especially because of the acquisitions, like in the process that you're acquiring a team along with whenever you acquire all these locations and these franchisees, you're also acquiring the franchisor and typically in a lot of the team. So how do you think about really fine tuning each of those teams, and how involved do you get?
So first, the way we build the platform is a combination of what we call shared services and then dedicated brand services. So each of the brands have dedicated teams, and those teams are franchisee facing relational teams. They're teams that are a part of the what makes that brand special, the secret sauce. So it could be curriculum, innovation, attractions, those types of things. So when you then think about what all brands share, we really at Unleash Brands, we sell classes, camps, one-time events, celebrations, and leagues. That's what we do. We offer those to our user, which is a kid, and our customer, who is the chief household officer. So a little gym may offer classes, they offer camps, they also offer one-time events. An urban air offers one-time events, offers camps, offers birthday parties. And so, from a shared services perspective, we have technology that we've built in-house that is modules for classes, modules for camps, modules for birthday parties, modules for leagues. Then we know how to market to our customer, the chief household officer, about a birthday party, a class, a one-time event, or league. We have one way to check in kids, one way to do a makeup class, one way to track progress. Everybody needs accounting, right? And gap is gap, no matter if you're TLG or you're urban air, right? Everybody needs HR, and like how you pay people, right? The laws around that and how you do it are the same. So when you find all of the commonalities across all the brands and they share a common customer, then you can gain a lot of operating leverage through shared services, which then allows you to invest more in the brand's dedicated teams around their secret sauce. And that's how we're able to build a very efficient platform with high EBITDA margins, um, and able to acquire these brands, and then layer in our shared services and secret sauce and improve them.
When you think about acquisition targets, right? So you've made you've obviously made a number of them now, and I think that it feels like the process is accelerating. And first it was
Mhm.
like, okay, little gym, and then like it just kind of then now it's like I didn't even know you had a number of these brands under the Unleashed Brands banner. But when you're looking at these, like, what is the common thread or the common DNA that like falls under the quote unquote youth enrichment category? Like, what is it that makes somebody an ideal target versus just like, hey, these guys look like they have good margins and they're doing business well, and we want to bring them in.
It's a great question. And that's the difference between being a platform company and a portfolio company. If you just look at margins and synergies you can take and back office SG&A stuff, you're really a portfolio company that is just optimizing the P&L. A platform company has tremendous commonality. So for us, they've got to serve the same user, which is a kid. Now that can be a kid anywhere from birth until 18. But it need that they got to serve that kid. They need to the customer needs to be the chief household officer. Um, They need to help kids learn, play, or grow. So science, technology, engineering, arts, math, and learn. Grow is skills and hobbies, right? And that can be a lot of things from martial arts, theater, dance, swimming, and then play is anything that allows our kids to just get off a screen and escape, right, the world. And we like active play. So if we can check world-class brand, serves our customer, serves our user, and is in learn, play, and grow, um, then we start to dive in. And then from there, it starts to become, yeah, how are they running their business? How can we tweak it, help them optimize, and maybe bring them resources that they don't have, or many times we find amazing team members, amazing processes, amazing technologies that we can, when we acquire, we actually bring into the platform and put those across all of our other brands. And so but that's the basic framework, and the total addressable market of the youth enrichment space is large. There's a lot of great companies out there, both in franchising and in what we would call corporately owned, that we're in discussions with to bring into the platform.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. We've got over 1,400 locations now, so uh, and you're bringing more locations in. But what was one of the decisions maybe you made or technology you put in place that like franchisees or the operators like hated when you first put it in? Like, because they don't like change, right?
Yeah.
So, but you knew that it was going to be critical for either long-term value or a better guest experience.
So it's typically when you change out things like their point of sale system. Um, and because they're just so used to doing that every day. But for us, that's fundamental. Like, it's table stakes, because our rules of engagement are when the customer wins, which the customer is the chief household officer. When the chief household officer wins, our franchisees win, and when our franchisees win, we win. And so we're always out there trying to reduce friction for the chief household officer in the following areas: in identifying what's around them for their kids, making it easy to sign up, easy to track their kids' progress, easy to know what's next when their kid graduates or wants to try something new, easy to sign up for that next thing, and then also feel rewarded as a customer of Unleashed Brands. And also, our customers want transparency on price and schedule. The last thing our chief household officers want, moms want, is to go and try an intro class, go and try something only to find out they can't afford it or it doesn't fit into their busy schedule. And so, in order to achieve the rules of engagement, we needed to put everybody on the same point of sale system. And because if you have three kids, the chief household officer doesn't want to have 8 different apps for all of our brands, their credit card across 8 different billing systems, one place. And so that's hard. But because, as you know from the tech world, like, technology is always under development. It's never done. There's bugs, there's things. The way brands used to do things for 45 years at Sylvan or the Little Gym, for example, we may not do it the same way in our system, because every brand has to interact with the customer the same way. One way to check in a kid, one way to sign up, one way for a makeup class. So to try to get everybody on the same page can be difficult. But um, the results are, when we've done it, have been phenomenal. I mean, the Little Gym, for example, when we migrated them off of a system called Oasis and onto Command Center, which is our in-house point of sale technology, their same store sales growth had been in the mid 20% range since we bought it, CAGR. And so just phenomenal results. So that's absolutely difficult. We've also learned how to be better, right, at change management, casting vision, galvanizing the franchisees, and rolling things out in a smoother way. Not we didn't do it perfectly, and we're always getting better. We say we're on the constant pursuit of perfection, to which we'll never achieve. Like, and so we just got to keep getting better. But that's something that we've had friction with. We continue to have friction with as we migrate brands on, and I foresee that continuing to have friction in the future around that.
Yeah, yeah. With some of your, and maybe this is different for your different brands, but obviously, like the brands live and die on franchisee execution. So, what separates your top 5% or top 10% operators from the middle of the pack? Besides obviously location.
Yeah, it's there's a great speech. I think it was Coach Saban did about like how everybody wants to be winners, but what separates winners and losers, right, is the execution of the basic fundamentals, like the stuff that's not sexy. And it's very similar in franchising. Like franchisees are coming into a business who that has been proven multi-site across decades, and there's a basic recipe for success, and it's been proven over and over again that when you follow that, you have the highest probability for success. It's when you change the variables and the recipe that franchisees start having more problems. So first and foremost, franchisees who are engaged in their business are always the most successful. And then when you couple that with following the playbook, it makes franchisees extremely successful. Then when you layer in that they help get on the innovation programs of the various brands and help the brand get better, then that exponentially can help them perform. And so to do that, we have franchise advisory councils, innovation committees, subcommittees where franchisees can give their input, help shape where the brand goes, and try new things. And so that's what we always tell people is like, hey, everybody wants to be the number one franchisee. Everybody wants financial freedom. Everybody wants, that beach house, whatever it is they want, but you got to execute. Like if it was just as easy as signing your franchise agreement and getting your business open and then walking away, everybody would be doing that. And if that's what you want, then you just need to put your money in an index fund, right? And then you don't have to manage it. But like you're a business owner and you've got to be engaged and build a great team and run the play.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's something that some franchisees or new franchisees forget or don't think about, right? That they are actually building a business, and there's going to be the messiness of dealing with people and establishing a culture and hiring and firing and all of these things, and managing inventory and operations and things that I think they get excited about, like you said, the end result, right? The
Yeah.
outcome, and forget that there's all these inputs that need to go in order to get that outcome.
Yep.
Uh,
Absolutely.
when you look at scaling your culture, right? What are some of the non-negotiables? Like, you talk about your core values, but like, what are some of the
Mhm.
non-negotiables that you protect, even if it may impact your growth, like slow growth down, because maybe you had to let go of a high revenue operator, high revenue franchisee or a partner or something because they didn't align with those standards or those values.
There's core values that we stick to. Some of them being gritty, frugal, fun, innovative, curious, courageous, humble, or authentic is what we call it. But um, and we hire and fire by those, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes it's you get people on the team that it was a bad hire in the sense that they just you made a bad call. Like I had
Mhm.
one
Yeah.
that I hired in the technology side that came from a Fortune 500 company, and they didn't understand that how to work in a medium sized business. They didn't understand how to work in a franchise business, and that person would keep coming to me and saying, "Well, it's only going to cost franchisees $1,000 a month," and I'm like, $1,000 a month, like that's a lot of money to a franchisee, right? And when you come from a company where like money is monopoly money,
Right.
right? It's just a number on paper. It doesn't translate. So that was on me, right? And he didn't know the frugal word, our core value of frugal and how to be. And we're just saying frugal, not cheap, right? And then there's an element of being a part of our culture, which I would say would be the y-axis, and the x-axis is productivity, because productivity is not a core value for us, right? Like we believe if you're gritty and innovative and courageous and curious, all these things, you will be productive.
Mhm.
But there can be people who don't hit our core values and are very productive. The problem is they leave a lot of dead bodies on their path, right? They burned a lot of bridges with vendors and relationships and franchisees. And we've had to have a couple of times where just like we may be getting the results in the short term out of that, but long term, that's not going to work. And we've had to make a move there, or we have a philosophy that always do right by the customer. And so, you saw a lot of businesses take different approaches during COVID on, am I going to keep billing customers for memberships or whatever? And those decisions are very important. And so if we don't have people that want to always do right by the customer, even maybe if it's borderline, like, hey, we're probably right, but like we need to take care of this customer, we move on from those types of people. And then like we also take a lot of pride in having fun, and it may seem minuscule, but we spend more time together in our office with each other than we do our families, right, and anything else that we devote our lives to. And so we talk a lot about like fun isn't necessarily ping pong and beer kegs, and but what it is how you come to work. You like, we can have fun in anything that we do, and in any hard season we can find the joy in any situation. And that, having that spirit about you, is very important because it trickles to their team and franchisees along the way. So those are some of the things that we look at, and some of the maybe the speed bumps we've hit along the way.
Yeah. You mentioned you're obviously a voracious reader. I think any major leader is a reader, right? So love that you do that. But you obviously have to put some of those things you read into practice. And so as you went from this founder of a single park, and then to three parks, and then to franchising the fourth park, and to now the CEO of a billion-dollar platform, what parts of your personal operating system, I guess I'll say, did you have to uninstall, reinstall, upgrade, etc. along the way?
Yeah, there's been quite a few different things in how I've had to lead. One, I'm a fixer, right? And as you get bigger, sometimes you've got to let things play out, and let your team like work it out. Um, and so that's one. Also, um, just the way I've like, it talks about in the hard things about hard things, how there's peacetime and there's wartime, and how you lead is different in both. I would also say there's the way you lead in different stages of your business is very different, right? Like back in the day, it was like being on a speedboat in our garage in Grapevine, because everybody heard your phone calls, so everybody was in the loop. Or like a staff meeting was just me looking behind my shoulder and being like, hey, we got an opening this weekend, is the signage up, is it what, you're just. And so now it's like being the captain of a battleship, and I've got to, through various forms of communication, whether it's short videos or emails or town halls, I've got to cast vision for that, make sure everyone's on the same page, and then make sure that it percolates through all the decks and the ranks and all the people. And although in a speedboat we were moving faster, on a battleship we're going slower but covering the same amount of ground. It just takes longer to turn, and we're going slower. So some of the things, like, is how just how you do it, like. And so it became taking everything we were just doing that was tribal knowledge, and then documenting it into systems, processes, procedures. We said it in the early days, and we say it today. Like, if you find yourself doing the same thing over and over again, you either need to automate it, turn it into a checklist, systematize it. And now with AI and machine learning automation, you can do a lot of that. Um so it now, for me, I focus. This is what something I actually stole from you, like, a long time ago. You said vision, capital, people.
Mm.
um and really, when I now looking back, when you used to say those things, it is really where I am today. I have to know where we're going and where we've come from. I've got to make sure that we have the capital to get to the vision, and then I've got to make sure that we have the right team to get us there.
Mhm.
Because I literally cannot do it by myself. um, I am not the smartest guy in the room. I don't know enough about every area of the business, or of each individual, say, discipline, marketing, accounting, or whatever, like, to be able to do it individually in it. So I've got to lean on those people and lead those people. So I get up every day, meet with my people, like, what do you need? What are your challenges? Is there any homework that you need from me? Any roadblocks you need me to help bust through? Any fires you need me to help go light under people? Um, and then right now in budgeting season, I'm asking people, if you had no limitation on resources, time, people, money, systems, what could you achieve? Just write it down. And let me see if I can make it happen. Right? Too many times people are given a budgeting process and say like, I need you to achieve this with this, and they're like, well, what is there to even talk about, right? And so a lot of our tremendous growth has been saying as has been stretching people in their thinking. I think it was Iger's book, Ride of a Lifetime, or something like that, where he talks about the gap between where people are and what they truly can achieve is a lot smaller often than they perceive. And it's
Mhm.
my job as a leader to go, I don't I don't know that that's that unachievable. Like I think we can do that, and I'm going to support you in that. And so on any given day, I'm a cheerleader, I'm a tie or a tiebreaker, right? Or like I'm a pit.
Yeah. Yeah. When you look, because you are the visionary, right? So you've got the vision component to that VCP. When you look out 10 years, 15 years, maybe, yeah, but let's just say 10 years for now, right? 'Cause what does the youth enrichment, learn, play, grow landscape look like? And what are models out there that maybe don't exist that should exist? And how are you thinking about the future of this like learn, play, grow youth enrichment industry?
So Unleash Brands will be a household name. It will be to the Marriott Bonvoy of youth enrichment. It'll be I envision, every family in America, they wake up every morning, they get their cup of coffee, they ask each other, did you sleep good? And then they get on our app and they're seeing what their kid's schedule is for that day, and they're tracking how their kids are progressing. Um, I have a vision for helping parents better relate to their kids, understand how their kids are wired, um, better communicate with their kids. It's wild to me that you buy a car, you get a manual. You buy a blender, you get a manual, right? You have a kid, and the only thing you really get is a nurse that checks to see if you have a car seat, and then they just give you this wave goodbye.
Mhm.
And we know there's a lot of ways to parent, and so we're not trying to create the way or one way, but we are trying to be a partner to families in this journey. And we're not saying that we are going to have all the answers, but what we are saying is that we're going to walk with parents while they find those answers. And so I see a world where we have a medical advisory board of psychologists and youth enrichment specialists and pediatricians who are putting content out there through this app, um, and really just it being that well-rounded brand in the family space. And that's the journey that we're on. Next year, we will be launching Unleash Brands as a consumer-facing brand. We'll be launching that app. It's all under development right now. You'll see a little bit of it sprinkled into the media here, leading into Black Friday. Um, but that's where we'll be. I mean, we acquire 1 to 2 companies a year. So, 10, 15 years from now, we will be much bigger from a brand perspective, a footprint perspective. I will have a bigger international footprint because we believe no matter a child's race, religion, origin of birth, every family wants that kid to learn, play, and grow, right? They want the values instilled in their kids of cour- being courageous, of never quitting, of respecting authority, of loving others that don't look and sound like them. I think that like that's what we're out there to do. Like we don't sell necessarily classes, camps, one-time events, leagues. Like what we really sell is courage, confidence, discipline, right? Respecting authority, respecting others. And that's why our business is so recession resistant, is because um, our families they'll do anything they can to keep their kids learning, playing, and growing. And so it's just a great space to be in.
Yeah. when you think about giving back, right? So this is something that's been, a part of your ethos for a long time. But you've got the Unleashed Brands Foundation now, and it's pledging millions to kids facing adversity. But what was the shift to from going from like we should give back to actually structuring something, putting a scaled commitment in place through an actual foundation?
So, as you mentioned, like we've always done things, right? Like even in the early days, we were hosting birthday parties for foster kids, and we were helping with these storehouses and that would give foster families clothes and diapers and food and so we've always had a heart for it. We've always felt like um, that we've been blessed to be generous and help others. It was when we started to get scale as the platform that we noticed our franchisees also had that same heart, and we were seeing like all these stories like just pop from around the country. And I just said, the same way that we're better on in a for-profit manner and a for-profit strategy together, we could be better in a not-for-profit philanthropic way together, like power in numbers. And so we created the Unleash Brands Foundation to make it easier on our franchisees to give back. Because sometimes it's just hard, right? It's just hard, and they're so focused in building their business every day, and they have these hearts. It's our job to tee up great opportunities for them throughout the year. Whether it's right now, we're going into Toys for Tots, then we have Socket to Cancer, we have autism awareness, we have childhood cancer. So and then what we wanted to say was like, hey, to our customers, like we're in your corner, and no matter what you're going through, like we're in your corner. And we believe that that every kid should have the opportunity to learn, play, and grow. No matter what they're going through, they should feel loved. And so we felt like no, they're like actions speak louder than words. And so putting together a program with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, now called Blood Cancer United, around being one of the largest donors for childhood cancer research, was a way to say we're serious about this, and not only just the money, but also using our voice and our network to help educate people around the country about childhood cancer and the fact that like there are not any dedicated child treatments. All they really do is just dilute an adult treatment. And it's wild. Like you wouldn't take a Mucinex tablet and break it in half and give it to your kid. You would want child Mucinex. Well, they don't have that for many of the things kids face. And so stepping up to say, hey, we want to help change that, or through Hope Kids, helping kids with other life-threatening diseases, medical issues, be able to experience our facilities in a safe way by closing it to the general public and having smaller groups come in. Um, is something that like it's an amazing way to give back. It's also like you at scale, you deal with so much, and our franchisees deal with so much. It helps you never forget what it's really about. And I just firmly believe very few times in life will people get the opportunity to have the for-profit world intersect with a nonprofit world where you can make money and make a difference at the same time with your actual customer. And so it's just so fulfilling and rewarding to do it.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. All right, so we're gonna go do a bonus quick hit round. So I'm gonna
All
get
right.
a couple different questions here. So first of all, what's one industry practice? And now I know that you touched all different, the learn, play, grow has different aspects, but like let's just stay focused into the FEC LBE world. Like, what's one industry practice that you'd wish that the whole industry would get rid of or retire immediately?
Um, Gosh, you know, that one is hard for me. I think that if in this industry, it needs to be harder to get into it. You and I have
Hmm,
talked about this all the time.
yeah.
Um, I believe that it does a disservice to the industry, and it does a disservice to the person making the investment to just be able to show up somewhere, buy a bunch of attractions, and go open a facility with no training. I think it's dangerous for the industry. It can be dangerous for the customer. So why I love franchising is because it gives a framework around safety and operations and compliance, to that operator versus going out on their own and just winging it.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree with you there. You said you are data focused, data obsessed at some level. So what's one metric, or maybe a couple, but or like a group of them, but what's one metric in general that you obsess over that a lot of founders and leaders ignore?
So there's two, and I don't know that people ignore them or not. I would say for me, um, what's my consumer acquisition cost and how long do I retain them? Um, and those two kind of ebb and flow, right? Like, um, if I can retain them longer, I might not have to spend as much to acquire them, or I might not have to acquire as many. Um, and so I think those two, go together. Too many times people are focused on revenue, but they have holes in their boat, and so something's leaking out, and or in their funnel, right? And so I think if they focused on those two, and then maybe to add one more is like too many times people they just I need more leads, I need more leads, and I'm going, well, if you look at your let's just talk tech. If you look at each of your pages in your consumer journey, what is the abandonment rate on each of those pages? And if you optimize each of those pages with the same number of leads, I bet you could get more conversions, things like that. So we do a lot of A/B testing on the tech side, and focus on those KPIs a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, just definitely in the software world, it's the you mentioned customer acquisition cost, so it's CAC to LTV for us, right? So lifetime
Hmm.
value of the customer,
Hmm.
it's measuring that. That's such a huge metric in the software, but really in anything that's going to be scaled, you really need to understand that CAC to LTV for sure. All right, we've touched on a couple of books already, but what's a book or a framework from a book, or a story that you've stolen shamelessly, maybe for how you lead?
Um, I there's a couple things. I'm really big right now in continuing to understand our consumer, right? Our customer. Now I'm a dad, so I'm in it every day. 13-year-old, 10-year-old, 5-year-old. So like I'm right there. But Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation is something that it's a very science-oriented book that I'm reading, and I talk a lot about in what the parents are going through and why they need this partner in Unleash Brands. And so that's one. I would say, I'm looking at my books over here. There's some of the more recent ones. The Five Types of Wealth is a good one, and it talks about not just money, although that is one of them, but your time, relationships, physical health. Those are because you can be really good in money, but if you have a lot of money and all those other things are bad, it's like what's it for? Right. And so being more intentional with time, and that book, something I stole from it that I've been using at the organization is, I break down the year into days, working days. I break down the days into hours, and then those hours into two 30-minute blocks. And then I help everyone in my organization understand what their hourly rate is. Um, and not just their hourly rate based on their base and their bonus, but their hourly rate based on their base, their bonus, and the fact that everyone in our company has ownership in the company. And when we transact, they're going to get paid on that. And so maximizing those 30-minute blocks of every day, every hour, right? And to drive value and focus on the KPIs. And so on everyone's desk, they have these laminated sheets with these circles, and every day they mark out a circle, so they know how many days are left towards big milestones and what we're working towards. Having people understand the value of time and understand what they're marching towards, not only is it rewarding and fulfilling for them, but it actually creates a tremendous amount of efficiency and productivity towards actually achieving what you want to achieve. And that came out of the five. It's called Five Types of Wealth.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. All right, so last question here, and it's a question about a question. So, what is one of the best questions that a young founder or operator has ever asked you? And then, basically, how did you answer that?
Um, a lot of times I'll get the question of like, how'd you come up with the big idea? You know, and we talked about it a little bit. Um, I believe that when you're curious, um, and you're just always just asking questions, seeking to understand, reading, thinking about the world around you, is when opportunities present themselves. And when you're constantly learning, striving to get better, and positioning yourself to be able to capitalize on one of those opportunities, is when the is when kind it happens. Um, and so I tell people, be a good steward with whatever season that you're in, and then keep taking steps, being curious, keeping your eyes open, your ears open, and for those opportunities. Too many times people want to sit down with a blank piece of paper and go, I want to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to start a business, and then they're just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, you can go to you can look at franchises. That's a great way to do it,
Mhm.
right? But like, if you're really going to start something from scratch, or try to be inspired and come up with something, it's not just sitting down with a blank piece of paper. It's being out in the world and being curious and being ready for when something presents itself. I mean, that's what happened with Unleashed Brands. That's what happened with Urban Air. It isn't like, I'm some scientist that is, tinkering in a lab trying to build something. At least in the success that I've had. And then I always tell people, and we all know this saying, but every overnight success took 15 years to build.
Mhm.
Like, that people are only seeing the cover of the magazine today. They're not seeing all of the blood, sweat, tears, heartache, disappointment, right? That it took to get there. And I refuse to forget what it took.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's an amazing way to wrap things up here, Michael. I so appreciate you coming on and sharing your story here in the third degree. And looking forward to seeing you next week at IAPA.
Likewise, Brandon, thank you. It's great to see you. We'll see you next week.